Beat you to it.
You got it. Love it.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the August 18th version of MVP Office Hours. It's really, really great to see all of you. I know that many of you are wishing you were at Midwest Dreamin'. I know I am. But this is just as good, maybe better. As always, we are here the first and third Friday every month. Caveat that changes next month because of Dreamforce, and so we're going to be on the second and fourth, and that is in the success, and the invites will be updated. So if you try to join on the 1st or the 15th, you'll be wondering where
lonely.
So,
lonely.
Yeah. So please note, as I'm sure the world is struggling as well, the three of us have decided to move away from the X or LinkedIn, or I mean our Twitter, and we're suggesting if you need to contact us directly, leverage either the email or the LinkedIn links that are shown there. They're slightly different than our Twitter handles, so reach out there if you want to get a hold of one of us. But like always, the success community is your friend. Use that as best you can for both communications and questions and collaborations and all the other Asians. We're excited to have you join us and not have to deal with the pain of social media. And I'm going to try to change the screen. There we go. All right. Again, the next one is not going to be the first Friday of September. It's going to be the 8th, followed then by the 22nd, if I did my math right.
Sounds okay.
8th and 22nd.
22nd. Okay. So thanks for joining us. It's normal rules apply. Everybody, we want you to share and ask questions and give answers. We're all MVPs. Thanks for joining us. Feel free to put your questions in the chat or just raise your hand. We'll try to get to everybody in the best order we can as we're watching. Feel free to put any links or resources or answers in the chat. All of that will be compiled and added to the deck. You can share your screen, but remember this is a recording, so don't share anything proprietary or something that shouldn't be in the internet forever, because the internet's forever. You'll notice it even says at the bottom, the internet's forever, so keep that in mind. And of course, we want to have fun. We want to enjoy each other's company. We want to be honest and above the line, but the internet's forever. Please keep professional. Please keep it positive. It helps us all along. As far as events, as we said, Midwest Dreamin' and Witness is happening right now. Life Sciences Dreamin' and Mile High Dreamin' is just around the corner in August. And the big day, Dreamforce, is coming up September 12th through the 14th. There's the estimate I heard this past week was that they're at pre-2019 attendance. So it's going to be the old school swarms of people, multiple buildings, lots of entertainment, lots of the old Dreamforce feel. So it'll be a great opportunity to engage and network and see everybody. So hope to see you there. And Foo Fighters were announced yesterday, right? So
something like that, yeah.
Yep. All right. And with that, one last reminder that the schedule's changed. If I say it 5 times, then everybody's gonna remember, I hope. And with that, we didn't see anything in success or in email. I shouldn't say we. I didn't see anything in success or email, but I know that there was a couple private messages that came in. So do you want to kick off there, Dale or Joy, and then we can see what the group has?
Did we get private messages?
Mine was a supposing, so really it's open floor. Anybody who wants to jump on in. Diane has a dashboard question and just barely eked out Clayton. So Diane, you start, and then Clayton, you.
So Squire, remember when you said, hey, Diane, you probably don't need to take that course on reports and dashboards that you forgot to record.
Yep.
So I'm trying to create a dashboard that I want to put on our salespeople, their homepage. And what's happening is I've got all of the elements or components in this dashboard. And then if I have to go back in and edit the dashboard, all of a sudden everything goes away. And I'm left with a box that says, use the chart from the report. And if I click that, I lose my title, I lose my subtitle. What is happening? I'm going crazy.
The chart from the report, like, basically takes away all your controls over building the chart in the dashboard.
So I
Yeah.
shouldn't have a chart in the report.
You can have a chart in the report, but just don't click that option if you want to customize it with all the other
Yeah.
items.
But
Reports
what
and reports and dashboards have come a very long way, but I think in terms of charting, like forget the titles, forget the stuff around it, reports still have more robust charting capabilities than dashboards do. That's why they enabled the ability to use the report chart. But then reports lack the titling and the subtitling and all that kind of stuff. So what that's worth.
Well,
So-
you can change the title on the chart in a report, yes.
But
So
can you
with-
subtitle?
One of-
title I think is different than the title that shows up in a dashboard. Honestly, I think. But
So-
what's happening to me is I don't want to like use the chart report, but it's not showing me my original dashboard options anymore. Like I can't change it from a bar graph to a donut, or I can't.
Can you uncheck the use chart on report? Taco says
If I uncheck it, nothing shows up.
Yep.
Like my only option is to check it. It's
So before we solve the problem, can we pull back just one big step really quick? So, and everybody I think probably has some opinions, but I just want to call out. So there is definitely some subtlety to building a set of reports that drive a dashboard, and then like effectively locking down those reports so you don't break your dashboard component, right? Like because of what you're experiencing, right? As soon as you kind of basically publish a report to a dashboard, there are certain things like what you're describing that's going to break it, and then you might not realize it's broken until some user reports it. So there is something to be said about that. I personally like to have, if it's a public dashboard, I have a very specific folder that I've got sharing lockdown on that allows people, like, so I know these are the reports that run this dashboard, don't break these, and then if I'm going to iterate, I'll clone it and do something. I don't know if that's the best practice, but it's how I like to do it to ensure that doesn't happen.
okay.
So I just want to pause right there for a second. Anybody else have any feedback in that space?
I've done similar for dashboard reports that people are counting on to be consistent, so that like they don't live in public reports, they don't live in a folder where anyone from the company can make changes to the report. If there are people that have a clue about what's going on with that dashboard, then
And there's always going to be someone who clicks a link, clicks the report, edits it, doesn't realize that they've broken the world. So it's always nice to have a little bit of constraints there.
the other thing I've done to back myself up is I just clone it and then tuck it away and just tuck it away.
Right. Like keep your own copy of the report that's public, right?
Yeah, and I can always
Yeah,
go back and fix it, but
So
Um,
Dale, did you want to jump in? I know you made a snarky comment, but did you want to say something?
No, I just you opened with, I'm sure everybody has opinions, and I take offense to that because I'm never opinionated, ever.
Nope.
So-
And that's why we love you, Dale.
Yeah.
So I
So
have a
then-
question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Diane, did you say that when you were not checking the box to use the chart report, that you weren't able to select a bar graph?
Yeah.
Okay, is the chart have a summarization of some sort?
It's grouping.
I'm sorry, does the report have grouping or summarization of some sort?
Yeah, grouping.
Okay.
Yeah, I do know that. I
Yeah.
do know that much. I'm pulling my hair out
Yeah.
because I'm
able to
working
show
with
us?
these. What's that?
Are you able to show us?
Because I know what's going to happen as soon as I go into my sandbox and pull this thing up, it's going to work right. But I can try and share. So
Yeah. I think it would be really valuable. I'm trying to unshare. I also think this is more me being an old buddy-duddy. Let's make sure that we're always prefacing anything we say with the context. So if you just say the chart, there's 3 of them that you're talking about: the one that's on the report, the one that's in the dashboard, the one that's on the page layout. So we're talking when like say when Barb was asking what she's asking, I think, and I want to put words in your mouth, Barb, is like the report chart is based on an aggregated report summary. You've checked a box on the dashboard component to pull the report chart in You know, see what I'm saying? Like that really helps us jump to where you're like get in the same seat that you're in.
And I also want to say that probably everybody on this call has benefited at some point from sharing their screen to then have it work when it hadn't worked, because that is sometimes the secret recipe. So if we help in that way, then great, we've done our job. There's no shame. I'm just saying.
It's the fairy dust that happens when
Oh,
you
wait,
follow
I just
every,
clicked the wrong
every
thing.
step precisely because you're being watched.
Right. We've all
And-
been there. We feel it. We know.
Or it's the phenomena where you can't possibly type a word correctly when someone's over your shoulder.
Oh yeah.
It's impossible.
The is my killer.
All right. I'll see if I can get any of these to do what I. No, so I see this here, okay?
Yep.
But what's happening, so this is good. Like I would love this because this allows me to actually update all of this stuff down here. But what's happening to me is I'm getting this with nothing below it. Let me see if I can find another element on here that's going to do it.
So you're seeing the decide to use a report checkbox, but you don't see any features if you choose not to. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's
Interesting.
exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can make it happen.
I mean, I think Barb, to your point, like usually when you see that, it's because there's no aggregation. So it's like I can't do anything with non-aggregated data.
Yeah.
There could be groupings, but there could be no totals.
Even then, though, I thought base.
You would get a record count, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Let's see, I messed around with these for hours trying
You
to get.
definitely could have like run into like a bug or a hiccup of some sort.
Because I also wonder, have you done anything to the reports that are being referenced in these dashboards that may have then fixed the issue or
Like one of these.
Sorry. And then my final question, and I'll shut up, is Lightning is very cache dependent. So is there something stuck in your browser cache that's causing an issue? Would be my.
That could be, but I usually clear my cache one or more times a day because I've run into that problem in the past. I can't get any of these not to work now. So this dashboard, this dashboard is based on the running user. So I had all of the reports filtered on my opportunities. This one I actually changed to all opportunities because I couldn't get it to let me fix it without doing that. And the other thing was I cloned a dashboard that somebody else had to make this dashboard, and there were filters in there. So the dashboard that they were using, you could filter based on region or by rep. And so I removed those. But that seemed to work like on one of these components here, these elements, and not the other. So I was just crazy. But that's exactly what was happening. I would click on the edit here, and all I would see is use chart setting from report, and all of this down here was gone. I couldn't do anything.
So quick question. I don't know if anybody's dealt with this. If it's set to running user, then you're configuring to running user. Does it break if the user doesn't have access to the data, so it doesn't know what to do with what the source report does? I don't know if it's that smart.
Yeah, that shouldn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've made sure that everybody has access to everything that's in the report, all the reports that we use.
Then why do you use running user?
Because it's going on a home page.
You want to be able to show my results.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah, it's going on a sales homepage for sales based profiles.
Right.
And I want it to just be their stuff.
Got it.
Right. But to answer your question, Squire, it should be data context irrelevant. It's I have a report which has aggregates, should be able to chart. So let's make a thing on a dashboard. Like that's all that should be happening here, regardless of data.
And maybe it was a cache issue. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
I said it tongue in cheek, but nobody's super confident in Edge. I don't think could have been a Chrome versus Edge situation.
Oh, good catch.
Yeah,
You
I
use
just
Chrome?
use Edge. I use the Chromium Edge Chromium. So
Which is becoming increasingly not supported by Salesforce. So
really?
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. I was just looking at winter release notes this morning, and Chrome is really the only 100% without a doubt, no exceptions, fully supported. Even Safari has exceptions, and Firefox has exceptions, but then Internet Explorer and Edge, Chromium are not supported. They flat out say not supported.
They do?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I did not see that. My entire company uses Edge, but
Well, I mean, let me make sure I'm not insane. Maybe it was like analytics that it said that, but
yeah, I thought if you were using the Chromium version of Edge that you were okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I did
even-
just have
Microsoft Edge, Microsoft Edge non-Chromium is not
Okay.
supported.
yeah.
Supports latest stable browser version, Internet Explorer mode for okay. All right, sorry.
That's all right. I did have a customer community user have an issue with she was using Edge and couldn't log into the community. I think it was a number of things honestly on their end, but I was surprised to see that she was using the Chromium version of Edge. But okay, I'll just carry on here. If I ever see this again, I swear I'll screenshot it and show it to you at a upcoming.
We believe you. We believe
awesome.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also offer, so going back to your tongue in cheek about that recording. So join Dashboard Dojo if he comes up again, because that group, David is, and everybody who helps him, I guarantee one of them will be like, oh, it's this. And they're so good at what they do. It's a great session, especially if you're hitting corners or you're trying to figure out, like, it's basically MVP office hours for reports and dashboards. So I highly recommend their session. I think it's once a month. I'm not positive of that. But
Okay.
I'll see if I can find the link.
We're just going to turn into a commercial for everyone else's.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. So Clayton, I'm reading your question and I'm thinking that this is now coming down to your customized configuration. So why don't you jump on and maybe even show us what's going on?
All right, see if I can move this dialog box. Okay, so what I'm doing is we may have an opportunity that goes through certain stages, and it's in one stage, and then it may pass to the next stage. And there's a couple places where I'm doing this. I'll just focus on this one, where basically I've got a pricing revision requested, and we set a target completion date, and then we have the completed date. So we have what iteration of it. And let's say it goes on, and then the salespeople kick it back to us, and we're going to reassign it to an analyst again. So then I would have multiple values for this. And I played around with the history tracking field on it, but then when I went to create some reports with it, I was having a hard time. And so it's kind of like you got a single record with multiple values. So the reporting, the normal reporting history doesn't really do you much. And then when I did history tracking, I wasn't able to find it all. Does that?
What question are you trying to answer with your report?
Okay. Basically what we're trying to do is say, okay, I'm assigning it to an analyst today. Here's the due date. here's the date it was completed. Then it moves on to sales. Sales may kick it back, and so we're going to go through that process a second time. And, so we'll move it out of this stage, move it into the sales stage, kick it back. If they kick it back, then what we're trying to do is say, okay, we have to reassign it to an analyst with a new target date and track when it was completed.
So you're,
Do the original dates matter when that happens?
Yeah,
Okay,
they do. They're wanting to track productivity.
sure. Okay. Sorry, Joy, go ahead. I cut you off.
no, and so I'm the pricing revisions. Because I see you have a field for a number of times pricing was revised. Like that's not enough. You don't need to know just how many times it revised. You're trying to look for how long it was sitting with the revision team, or how.
We're trying to determine, and we've got it. We've also got another field we're tracking that's similar to this. We're trying to say, okay, here's the date that it was supposed to be completed on. Here's the date it was completed on. And so that's like one iteration. So it's done, we report on it, everybody's happy. Well, then sales kicks it back. And so the analyst is going to have to do it a second time. So we have to put a new target completion date and a new target date completed.
So what I feel like this is, and I'm trying not to make this too personal given our history in transportation and then me moving on to the railroad with Salesforce, and exactly kind of the same thing, is you don't want to track all of this on a single opportunity record. You're looking at a custom object that each iteration of the pricing revision is a record of data on that object. So what that gets you is every time something gets kicked back and you have to go through a pricing revision, you get a new record with a start date and an end date and a estimated completion date, actual completion date, whatever information you put on there. But if this is generated, if it gets kicked back and you need to go through this again, you create a new record detail that is a lot more updatable and reportable than field history tracking ever will be. You can't do anything to field history tracking reporting except report on it. You can't do anything to manipulate the data except say, I want these fields tracked or I don't. So I think you're looking at a custom object because every single opportunity could have a different number of times it goes through this. But if each iteration goes through basically the same process, it's essentially a sub opportunity object. Like it's a sub process of your opportunity process, and then stick a flow or something on it as the actual engine that feeds you through these records, that when you know a stage has gone back and you know you're going to need to generate a new pricing revision record, flow handles that and then implement some kind of a UI that allows sales or pricing or whoever to populate that record and complete it to allow the opportunity to then proceed and then either get to closed or kick back and go through the process again.
And
That's
even
exactly
more
what
so,
I had to
Dale,
build for the railroad.
I think if you do that, you also open up the door to a conversation about what other data is appropriate for that process, right? So it's not only just Dale took it and now he's responsible for these 2 dates, but it's, and who transferred it and when did that happen? And if you're really talking about denormalizing the user and date related data to the opportunity, I 100% agree with you, Dale.
Yeah, well, and just to unpack the whole thing that I built for the railroad is we actually had anywhere, we had like 4 or 5 sub processes that had to go sequentially from the opportunity. You go boom, 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 boom. You come back to the opportunity to be able to close it. Even within each of those 4 or 5 sub processes, there were varying numbers of teams that were involved in each of those. So like for the first one, there would be one record. It was called service design because the service design team had to evaluate the rail network. We're going to have to add more trains, more cars on these routes. And service design's job is to go evaluate it. That has to be done before we can then move on to feasibility, which any opportunity could have anywhere from 1 to 20 different teams within feasibility. If there was one team, I had to create one feasibility record that had to be completed before we could move on. If all 20 were involved, I had to create 20, all of which had to be completed before we could move on. But it was all child to the opportunity and gave us the variability of however many units or iterations or trial and error times, whatever it took to finally get us to checking the box to get back to moving the opportunity through the rest of the sales process.
And one question I have, Clayton, is how frequent do these multiple revisions occur? Is this happening on a large number of records, or is it the outlier?
That I don't have quantitative data on. I mean,
You're about to.
Yeah, that's probably gonna make your decision of whether you're gonna go the route that Dale is suggesting, which I think is probably the best route for that process. But if this is only happening once every 1,000 opportunities, is it worth going through that and creating that debt, technical debt, or just code, whatever it might be, to manage that and maintain that information and then report on it? It might be, you might get it frequently and it might be of importance, but I think if you answer that question first, you'll have a better idea which direction to go.
Yeah, definitely 100%.
Yeah, I would say it, in our industry, it tends to be probably more frequently. That's kind of why we're judging them. We're looking at productivity for the pricing people based on, they work their request the first time and then they're coming back working it another time. And so for it to come back probably multiple times isn't surprising, but I hear how much work is it worth to be able to provide a report is kind of what you're getting at.
Barb, too, that I'll add, not only how often does it happen to a record, but then also how many times does it happen when it does happen to a record? You have, like vertical and horizontal vectors there, because you might realize, you might find, 1 in 100 this happens to, but that one, I need to track it like 6 or 7 changes. I might be exaggerating. And that would also help you define, like 9 times out of 10, I don't care, but those times that it does care, I've got lots of records to assess. And you could even going back to my early comment, go one step further and say, let's say it's needed. Let's say that the child record is important and that you need to manage that process. Well, now you can do a flow that does things as well. Like, well, why did it get transferred from Clayton back to Dale? Like, give me some detail and let's log that. Like you can really turn it into something that's actionable and reportable beyond just how long did Dale work on it, but more like, and then why did Squire get it after Dale was done with it? Like that, it can really turn into good data if you feel you need it. Going back to Barb's comment.
Yeah.
Do you track?
Go ahead.
Do you track any other pricing data inside of Salesforce? And any of the other information related to your pricing? Or is it all done externally?
We have an external system that has the bulk of our details. This is more the opportunities moving through it. There is some data we move through, put in here, but primarily this is just to take it from sales, puts it in, they submit it to pricing, then basically completed by pricing, presented to the customer. Now we're kind of giving them an opportunity to say, revision requested. Dale, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say, like, yeah, you always want to have quantifiable evidence to justify the change, because you are introducing process and development here, going beyond what Salesforce offers out of the box. But I think this is one of those cases where one is many. you may only end up with one child object record most of the time, but you're going to be really glad you have those child objects set up for when you have to have more than one record. So.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Those price, sir.
Taco!
Yeah, between Taco and Tim and Grace, like, holy buckets. Rude. Does
Mom.
does how does the revision request get to the folks that are handling the pricing revision?
Literally, they're moving it from the presented customer stage to revised stage. And so they're moving it from one stage to the next.
So anytime like an opportunity is in this pricing revision requested stage, someone from seriously, I just talked to you guys and he wants to talk to me too. My point being was like, I didn't know if like there was like an email notification that got pushed out when it hit that stage, or if they were just monitoring a report or a list view of some sort. And I actually like, Dale, I really like where you were going, and my brain was like, ooh, would cases work here? I don't know. Seems like a heavy object for what we need.
I mean, if you got a process on that sub record, what better thing to use than something like case?
Right. Because then it's one of those standard things that might do what do what you need it to do, but I don't know if that would complicate it more than it needs to. But it's Clayton, that's going to be something that you've got to balance with, like how big and how light or how heavy do you
I'd like to add one other kind of like more about the governance. So you said some words that made me nervous to think like, well, if you're reporting productivity out of your system based on 2 arbitrary date fields, and if I, as one of the associates working for you, think that I'm going to be measured based on those and I have access to change them, that could be a challenge, right? So like being able to now also have some governance to say, like going back to like overbuilding it, but maybe I have a process. So when Clayton reassigns it, he has to put in some information and assigns it to Square. And then those dates and data are all locked into that child record and they are not accessible other than reporting to anyone. So now you have some credibility to what that data represents as well. I don't know if the place you work has shady salespeople, but I've worked at a lot of places like that. So if they knew they could beat the date,
this is a recorded line. This is a recorded line.
They're not shady. They find every
creative.
Good. Well done.
Hole in the bucket. They are like water. They find the fastest path to a paycheck. And they're amazing that way. They're the best QAs ever. Because they always push the button they're not supposed to. But yeah, I agree with that. Having this like, the time stamping situation happening and not editable is going to be hugely credible if this is, a big thing. But also like go back to the requesters and being like, how important is this? Because the development time that's going to come into this is not small.
Yeah.
Right. It feels accomplishable with Flow, but not small.
Yeah, and I've played with Flow a little bit, like you said, to trigger emails when something changes from one stage to another, or to, automatically, and this is in test, but automatically update, when it was completed. And when you're talking, I haven't explored sub processes per se, but are you saying, Dale, that you would have a custom object with these fields that relate to this specific opportunity?
Yeah. So the object itself, whether you use cases, which I'm a huge advocate for, because cases have their own life cycle built into them.
Mhm.
or a custom object that you could dictate as like a master detail and get some roll-up summary fields. But either way, what you need to look at is what are all the fields that go into one iteration of this thing. And so if one time back through kicking the stage back requires me to always ask those 6 fields that are in the pricing revision requested section, for example, if those 6 fields are going to have to be answered every single time you go through it, there's your custom object. It's those 6 fields. So that then those 6 fields get completed however they need to be. The opportunity moves forward again. Oh, I got to go back again. All that information, all those previous 6 fields we know were wiped out. So that's why we have a whole new record, blank 6 fields, waiting to consume those 6 fields to get populated to then move on again.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've got some research and some learning to do here on sub processes, but
Yeah, and sub process is not a Salesforce terminology you're going to find anywhere. It's just like we're using that to say you have your opportunity process, but then there's going to be like this little unpacked thing underneath at a certain stage that needs to also be done before it folds back into the opportunity process. So you'd be looking at a methodology best practice kind of a thing. There's no such thing as a Salesforce sub process. So don't necessarily end up down a rabbit hole that doesn't exist. I'll just say that.
okay. Are you kind of referring to doing it through flow?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I don't want to monopolize all the time. I noticed there's some other chats out there, but I do have a couple more questions if there's time at the end.
Nobody else is, well, yeah, nobody else has their hand raised. Nobody else has put anything in chat.
All right. So bottom line is quantify how frequently this would be done and how important that data is. Because if I have to go create a custom object to track those fields and create a flow, that's going to create a lot of additional work.
Do you have in your production org, does the number of times pricing was revised, is that accurate on all of your opportunities?
I haven't built the flow for that yet.
Okay. I just wondered if that data point existed already, if you could do a quick report and to try to quantify the number of opportunities you had that had more than one or had more than 0 pricing revisions, so 1 or more revisions.
Yeah, that was kind of an add-on in the last couple days, so I will definitely look at that. And I think if I could automatically do that, that would help. So yeah, because I've got it here and for the revisions, but I've also got the same thing down kind of for the initial request. So I'm kind of going through this, they go through it once, it's assigned, completed, moves to the different stage. And then if they come back, they're doing a revision. So I'm kind of tracking it twice. And they just really want the iterations. But when I tried to use tracking history, again, that didn't quite work out the way I wanted from a reporting perspective.
But at its core, how long have you had field history tracking turned on for these fields?
I'm all in test.
Okay, so nothing actually in production yet?
Yeah, and I probably should have done some more homework before I came on here, but
No,
I'm still playing with history tracking.
No, you're good. I mean, there are no expectations that like you have everything figured out to come into this. I mean, we realize we have this call twice a month, and if we hit you at whatever point in your process, like come with whatever questions you have. That's the point of this. So no worries there. My thought was if you had field history tracking turned on for a while in production, you could at least like send that data out to Excel and count how many times per opportunity, because you would know which opportunity it was. You'd quantify the number of records or how many times it changed, and you'd at least have that like on the side or data load update that field, whatever, but you wouldn't be without that data to start with. So.
Okay. All right, well,
And I mean, really, like, I know every company, every organization has their own change management process, but if you were to go into production right now and enable field history tracking on those fields and just let it start racking up, you wouldn't be negatively impacting anything in your org. All you would be doing is adding records to a field history tracking object. That's it.
okay.
So it's
Yeah,
a
and
no harm thing.
Yeah, I did play with the reports, so I kind of understand old value, new value. And I was just trying to do some joins, and I can do joins great in SQL, but I haven't quite got there very well in reports.
You can.
Because they don't exist.
Okay. All right. Well, for sake of time, I do have another question for you, if I may.
Please.
Okay. So for calendars, and I don't have this in test. I'm trying to use calendars and some of those fields where we were doing it, like the, let's call it for target completion date. So what I did was create a list view on opportunities for each person. And see if it's in here. Let's just do my own. Here, I'll just pick Chris. So within list view, I kind of had it equal to submitted to pricing, and then who the person was. And so for management, I could come in to calendars and select opportunity. I'm kind of doing this on the fly. Nothing like trying to remember what you did.
Yeah, I mean, so it might not be necessary to actually build it. So you're building a custom calendar off date fields. What's your question, Clayton? Maybe we can jump
Okay.
ahead.
So in other words, like, let's say I built this calendar and I can see everything Chris has for that particular list view. Well, now, not only do I have the ones that are in the submitted queue, but now I've got them in the revised queue as well. And I'm trying to figure out how can I get all that on his calendar for both of those without creating, additional list views and additional calendars. I haven't worked much with calendars. I understand there's events and tasks and things of that nature. Does it make sense what I'm kind of trying to explain?
Yep, 100%. So the first question I have is, who's looking at this calendar? Is Chris looking at his calendar, or do you have one for every person and then someone else is looking at the calendar?
Okay, each person has their own calendar, and then management has a view of every person's calendar, or each individual calendar.
So does it need to be individualized? Meaning, as a manager, do I need to open Chris's and then open Dale's and then open yours, or can it just be every record if I know whose are whose?
They do want the ability to see each person's individually.
Okay.
I mean, we could go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just gonna say, I mean, it feels like unnecessarily complex, but I also know how management can be. So, because obviously, or not obviously, but you could build the calendar that only just cares about stages and dates, and then include that field as each one of the calendar items. And then by definition, you could see Chris's, but you'd see Chris's next to Dale's, next to Barb's. So, but regardless, if management wants individuals, The second question is, so I'm not familiar, you can't deploy custom calendars, right? Anybody want to jump in there? Like, they don't pick up and change that. So you have to build these individually, right?
Because my understanding is they're largely data, and you can't deploy data.
Right. It's just a view. It's basically a list view, but I don't think they get picked up by change sets. I could be wrong. That's what I was wondering.
Right, because I'm saying because change sets are looking for metadata versus
Right. But like a list view is metadata, and that is the same idea. It's like a filter on data. And I don't remember if this falls into that space. But I would check before you get too far down the rabbit hole, Clayton, if they'll even deploy, because you could do all this work and then realize that what you really need to do is teach everybody how to do this, because you can't hand it off. I don't know if that's true, but I would check that.
Yeah.
But going back to just maintenance, you could build a calendar that just is for, I'll say but it's not based on ownership. There's a really cool opportunity that CMO showed us one time, where you create a formula checkbox that says, is this me, ? And then you confirm if user is the user. And so it's on a record, because formulas are runtime. So every time you open a record, the formula says, that's Squire. Is Squire looking at the record turns on, the checkbox turns on. Then in turn, you can run reports or list views or this to basically say, give me everything where the checkbox is true, and it pulls in yours without actually having ownership. You can sneak up on it that way. You might be able to get the individual sales rep versions of this in one calendar that way, but it won't work for the management thing.
Okay. Yeah, and I kind of learned the hard way about there's events, which, if you do other calendars, you can see all the salespeople because the events are their meetings, but this is more data.
Yep. So, and under the covers, it really, going back to what Dale was saying, it's the same thing, right? Like, all this is a fancy list view. When it's an event, it's sorting them by date and even getting date time, but it's just a picture of data of records. And so being able to do what you're going to demo, this works great, but it really, if unless you can deploy it, which, like I said, I feel like you can't deploy these, it's not going to get you down the path very quickly. You're going to have to do more of like a change management process or something, or come up with a solution that's quicker to like do manually. So I would check that first. But what you're doing is exactly what calendars are supposed to be, which is, let's put data on a calendar so I can see it all. The other thing that's going to be a little bit weird, because it is a calendar, is dates are dates, not date time. So all these are going to stack in that space at the top that's like not times. It's not a great experience if it's not a date time value on a calendar.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have several, like, let's call it renewals or bids, where I've got them all grouped together. And as a company, we can go in and we can click on, one of those without individuals. But then they want to be able to see individuals.
Yep.
And of course, they want to take it one step further and be able to see one individual stuff all at once, but with different colors for each type.
Yep. So I would offer that. Let's see, I want to say this above the line. What does seeing it on a calendar do for a manager? Like, so I'm going to be very facetious and say, if I looked at a monthly calendar of a bunch of dates, that doesn't really do anything for me other than show a calendar with a bunch of like boxes on it. Are they trying to understand workload? Are they trying to actually handle scheduling? Because it might not be the best use case for for the requirement. Maybe a nice like report layout with like conditional formatting or something like that might be a better resource, because maybe what they want to see is, are we overbooked? Are we busy at the end of the month? Do we just want to know like how many per week are happening? Like, those are reports that are not really just boxes on a calendar.
Like, you could group by week, you could group by date, you could group
And the nice thing is you can even do some bucketing within that layout to do some of the work that maybe they're trying to infer from a calendar picture without it being a calendar, and might be a better use case. So like I just was doing, so anybody who's a Superbadge fan, a bunch of new data validation, data aggregation Superbadges just came out. So I was pounding those out this weekend, and one of them had to do with inline report folders and doing some really cool stuff with, like, I don't know if you've ever had to like turn a date into a text string so you could sort them in a way that was like, and they have you do that in the Superbadge as a summary row. And now you don't have to have a field that does nothing except help you report. And that could be a situation where, like, oh yeah, you know, if I just group these by region and by week and just see a trend of how many are happening, maybe that's all that they really want to see. But I don't know if you've had those conversations.
Probably not as frank as I should. They want to, it is about workflow and productivity and just trying to help make sure we're not overloading people and that we're actually getting them completed. And test is always a poor example, but for example, you know, on 8/15, I had 2 to do, it got completed both on 8/15. You know, it would have the entire week here. I've got this one in production right now, but
yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about honestly is like one of those funnel charts is a great representation of like, how busy am I, and grouping by the appropriate timeline gives that picture way better than just boxes on a calendar. And I think you could probably prove that point by, if you just build one for Chris, say, and then go to your manager and say, okay, what does this mean to you? Like, it's 15 boxes on the month of August. What does that really tell you? Maybe I can give you something better. This strikes me a lot as, so I'm a big fan of SIPOC, the process management tool. And so often we get stories where I work where all we're talking about is the input, or all we're talking about is the output, and you're not talking about any of the other stuff like who and how and when and why. It's just like, I want a calendar. Well, hold on. What the heck does that mean to you? That's it. That's an input, right? It's not telling me what you're going to do with it. So that could be a really good conversation without killing you with a bunch of manual corrections.
Yeah, and I do have a lot of reports already, but they just seemed they like their calendars. So.
I'm sure. Yeah, I get it. I'm definitely not telling you not to, but I am challenging the value of what you're being asked to do.
Okay. All right.
Raise your hand if you just end up doing that stuff anyway, because they make you, regardless of whether your conversation is like, I don't know what you're going to get out of this. And they go, don't care, give me the calendar. And you're like, fine, I tried. So that's going to happen, right?
it happens a lot, but I think that it's important for folks to understand that, like, the solution that they're demanding isn't always scalable to the changes that come down later, or scalable to the size of the team that wants to adopt this thing. So like, while you're working with a very small group of people now, it's really important that you start that conversation about the scalability of this awesome solution that is not scalable.
Scalability and sustainability.
Thank you. Those are the 2 words I needed.
And I think it could also turn into a really good opportunity to kind of vet out the power of the platform. So when some of the stuff you've talked about today, Clayton, strike me as a filter to dashboard, so that the manager can go in and say, give me Chris's everything, and you get like the 4 or 5 pictures, and now go to Dale's everything, rather than having a calendar do one thing and a report to show the effectiveness. And like, maybe you give them a one-stop shop. Maybe it's even tabbed so that they always know, I want to know sales productivity. This is your tab. Poke around as much as you like. It does everything you want it to do. Maybe you can pivot them toward the power of the platform.
A Kanban board might also be useful.
Ooh, yeah.
To consider. I know, but I just want to like give you that, Clayton, to like maybe play with, because I know we have hard stop at 2 o'clock today. So your list views, you already have some of those built, right? And so maybe take a look at like how the Kanban board might contribute to that. So bye, Dale. Maybe the Kanban can help you a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on what all is going into it, but I've had high success with a Kanban, especially when it's like the things that they need to do, and then like all of a sudden it has a completion date and it's done. So it's no longer on the Kanban board. And you can like break it out by well, however you want to break it out.
Okay.
Yep, right there. The Kanban, yep. And you can change like what the sum is. You can make that like the record count, I think, instead of the dollar value. And so
and it's based on list views. So right now you're just looking at the recent
recently
view, but
viewed. This
you
isn't
can-
even
yeah.
these are just for
Yeah.
recently viewed. This isn't even a defined list view. But there's a lot of things that you can change with this from the gear icon and then kind of play around with it a little bit.
Yep.
The Kanban settings at the bottom of that one. And then bye, Diane.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate
course.
it.
All right, friends.
Thank everybody for your time. It was great to see all of you. I hope you have a great weekend. We will see you in
Allison.
3 weeks or at Dreamforce if not if possible, and just everyone stay awesome.
Yeah. Is anyone
Good
going to
seeing
Dreamforce? I'll be there. I'll be there. All right. We'll see you, Barb. Allison, no. Clayton, no.
No.
All right. Squire,
Yep.
I'll see you in a couple weeks then.
All right,
Barb, we'll
cool. Bye all.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.